In this commentary, we decided to do the weaponry of World War I. In World War I, many new weapons were introduced into warfare for the first time, like the tank and aircrafts. But when tanks were first introduced, they weren't very effective, and they were very unreliable. And aircrafts were very simple, but by the end of the war, they were used for many things, but originally they weren't important to the war. Weapons changed the war in many other ways, but also made it easier for the other countries to attack effectively as well. The advancements in air and water technology with ships and planes made it easier to fight at sea in the air. The new weapons introduced into World War I turned the war into a very cruel battle. These advancements would change wars to come for the rest of time.
The first tank was used in the Battle of Flanders and only became more popular from there. At first they were very unreliable. The idea for the tanks came from farming vehicles that were able to cover difficult terrain very easily. Lieutenant Colonel Ernest Swinton came up with the idea for this new type of fighting vehicle, but the idea for the tank to have caterpillar tracks came from Lieutenant W. Wilson and William Triton. One of the many ways that the tanks were used was to help make a path for the infantry. Since the tanks were armored, there was much less risk for death when the infantry was advancing into enemy lines. The more time that passed, the more advanced the tanks would become. The first tanks were used in such a way that it was inspiration for the ways that they would be used in future wars.
When the Wright brothers invented airplanes, they probably didn't have in mind that they would be used as tools of killing someday. Neither did the generals at the beginning of World War I. Airplanes never came to be fighting devices until the British invented it in 1915, a full year after the war began. Like any beginner's idea, World War I planes were primitive, only able to reach speeds of about 100 miles per hour. This induced lots of strategy, which resulted in the emergence of aces like Germany's Red Baron, who shot down 80 victims. His real name being Manfred von Richthofen, he acquired the nickname due to the bright red paint he painted on his plane in order to taunt the enemy. Other aces included Rand Fonck of France and Billy Bishop of Canada. Sometimes there would be two-seater planes, with the pilot in front and the machine gunner in back. Pilots at first used pistols and would get up next to another plane and shoot. Other times, one-seater planes were used for combat purposes or to escort an observing two-seater. One of the problems at the beginning of the war was machine gun bullets hitting the propellers. That was fixed, however, once Franz Schneider's patent from Germany of synchronized machine guns to propellers became popular. Airplanes did not play as big of a role in World War I as, for example, artillery or trench warfare did, but the effect it had on future wars was titanic. The development of airplanes in World War I acted as a catalyst in future wars, which saved lives. Of course, there are people who believed the fate in World War I rested on aircraft, which in a way it did. Aircraft did not play a large role in direct combat, but their role in observing, which controlled direct combat, was instrumental.